Good morning. Hope everyone is doing well. It's hard to believe it's already going into the second week of July. It's uh, it's crazy how fast this year is gone. Good morning, Lynette and C and Venetia. It's good to see you guys here this morning. I've always loved the name Lynette. My roommate in college was named Lynette. Love it. um, As always, please check in the chat box and say hello if you're on or around. Good morning, Cheryl. And that way, I know when a number of people have started and watched. Also today, with what we're doing, if you have thoughts or ideas along this, using old linens and have any concerns or thoughts about that, please be sure to write your questions in the chat box. I appreciate that, and that way I can try to address those as we go. And also, just a question for some of you, or all of you actually. Have you used linens in any way other than they were meant to? Do you have those, vintage or antique linens from parents, grandparents, that relatives, or that you have picked up because you love them and have used them in the past or using them now? Just kind of let me, know, and let each other know on the chat box, because that's sometimes very helpful to know where everyone is getting back to, where you're coming from in terms of the what we're doing on the class. And I'm kind of stumbling around. I'm trying to find something here on the screen. Anyway, I can't do two things at once. I think I've mentioned that before to you. So today we're going to make a box bag. It's very simple. The first time that I made one like this was to use a placemat, an already quilted placemat. But this is a really simple method of doing that because I'm not really a purse or a bag person. I don't make them, and when I do, it's quite the complicated process for me. So, for those of you out there who actually make them, and and do it with ease, I admire that, because it seems that my head cannot really wrap around how to do that. So the bag box is super easy today, and I want to talk a little bit about it. And I see that some of you, have some great ideas of how you're honoring your relatives of the past who've made these doilies, dresser scarves, napkins, all of that. So, the first thing that I want to talk about this morning is, what you're looking for to make a project like this, and to also show you one that I had put together very quickly. Um, First of all, here is the one that I made out of, I believe it was a tea towel. And the embroidery work is just beautiful on it. And so a box bag with tabs and stuff, and I used a piece of old lace that I also had, and this was used by my husband's grandmother. So this is the one that I made for today. And I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of linens that I think would work best for this. I have a lot of these linens. I have my mother's, and I have my husband's mother's and his grandmother's. And so I have quite a few of them. Love them, use them, at least some of them, all the time. And so the first thing that I want to say is that you want something that does not have, work done on the sides. of the panel, because that's where your seams are going to go, and they will be hidden. This one has a monogram in it, and it's, a basic cotton is really what it is. And the each side has this, crocheting along it, has a panel, and then it also has that open seam there a little bit. So I want to talk a little bit about, putting a zipper into something that has, some length on it, a little bit. What I have found is that if I turn, what has been crocheted or created on that side, if I turn it down like this, or if I, take it to all the way down, then I have that on the outside of the bag, and it will give a decorative touch to the top. And I can still take my zipper and sew that right up against the zipper. And then when the bag is done, I have this decorative you know point along that. So that is one example that I pulled out. I certainly didn't go through all of my stuff. This one always cracked me up, and I always thought the chickens were really kind of fun on that. This one would be a little bit tougher in terms of where to put the zipper, and so that it doesn't get caught in there, and that you couldn't turn, because that's definitely a back side. So I'm not sure that this is one that I would use, because, and it does not have anything on the other side at all. So I brought this one out because first of all, the chickens crack me up. And then because of there's no way unless I hid that and turned it under like that, and I'm not sure I would want to do that, because I kind of like the fringe on it. So I think I would find something else to do with that. I have a set of these napkins. I remember my husband's grandmother using them fairly often. This would make a small, box bag, and it would be pretty easy. And this could go into the seam lines that go on the side. You would still have a little bit of decorative on the top. But this was a little bit heavier cloth, and you could use something like that. Then there's these types of napkins and doilies. So this certainly would work as well. Using 1/2 inch seams, take care of that. This would go over that. But I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it does have some work in the fabric itself. Here is another one that could certainly work. An embroidery piece on it. This would be on one side, like the blue bag that I made, and the zipper would go quite nicely at the top. But the big thing is that if your sides are where your seams are going to go, so you may not want to cut that off. And so that was a quick thing, but basically nothing on the sides and enough to make your box bag. Then this is just a quilted placemat. And this is where I first, did this, because simply you fold it in half this way, put the zipper at the top, and then once the zipper is in, the sides are bent down. I want to go through this, talk it through just a little bit. And so your zipper is along here. Your, bag is folded in half this way. You sew up the sides of this, and then when you turn that out, these are fold. Your points are folded in, and that's what you mark across to get the square of the bag. And basically, you're done. And there's no quilting to be done. There is no seams to hide, and it doesn't take a very long at all to accomplish that. And I have, made some for family. The I've got a set of linens set aside for my husband's sisters so that I can create a bag for them out of the antique linens that we have. So they also have, something that's a bit of a memory of their grandmother. And so, and also their mother. And that's what I'm doing with that. So this is a basic, placemat with fringe on it. And I would probably, on the sides, just for the sake of doing it, I would probably trim this down where I put my seam lines so that isn't that bulk in there. And fold this back just a bit and sew this down so that it stays put and it doesn't give me issues with my seam line and sewing my zipper on. So I fold that back, and I've done that before. And there's some great fringes, and there's some great placemats. And I really find cute ones that have a little bit of decoration to them and stuff at World Market if you have one of those around. But for today, I'm using this dresser scarf, and it's only got some embroidery work on top of applique on one end. But the reason I chose this one to do on camera is because of the scalloped edge. And talking about doing that and putting a zipper in with a scalloped edge is what I was hoping to do with you for that. So let me check the chat box and see where we are. My linen ideas, and really that got me thinking about what I could do with some of mine, and was Cindy Needham. And I know that she has a couple of shows on the Quilt Show. So if you are a member, I would really go back and encourage you to watch Cindy's 2 shows. She also has some books out. What she does with old linens is just fabulous. And that, if you have a collection of them, because this idea came from some very simple things that I have, but it's a way of honoring all of that workmanship, and they can have these cases and that type of thing. And it's great to see that you have these also that's been passed down, and the whole repurposing, of these linens to me is a great way to honor that, because it's better than having them sitting in a drawer or in a box somewhere. And so the first thing that I had, wanted to do was to give some stability to the fabric, because one of the things that is true about all of these old linens is that the fabric is either washed a number of times, they're worn, and they're thin and they're fragile. So I started thinking about what I could do with that, and the of course, a stabilizer or a soft infuse or something like that on the inside was great for that. But then I would need to make a lining, and that becomes a little bit more complicated. And I wanted it to be as simple as when I used a already quilted placemat or an already made one, so that I didn't have to finish the seams, etc. So that gave me the idea of using vinyl, iron-on vinyl, and so that's what I did on the first bag. And the reason I call it a box bag is because it's a rectangle. Is basically, I mean, this is the sides, this is the top, and it looks kind of like a box. And so that's my reasoning for call it a box bag. I think that's the only thing that I've ever known it to be called, but it's like a travel bag. And but what I noticed about it is that the thickness of your vinyl makes a difference. All I had here at the house was thinner vinyl, so that's what I used, and it's not quite enough for my liking. This is going to work fine, and I'm going to love it. I've got some things stored already in it in terms of fabric and other things. Um, but at the same time, I wanted to give it a little bit more weight. I don't know if you can hear that on the computer, but it's a little bit crinkly. And so I put my head to it. So I put a layer of stabilizer down first so that I could have that stabilizer in there. But knowing that it needed to be covered, I put the vinyl on. And the reason I use the vinyl is because the inside of the case, if you use it for makeup or those kinds of things, you get, you want to wipe it out or clean it out from time to time, and you don't want those stains to travel to your outside materials. So that's why I used it. And so you would follow the directions. I simply measured my width and my length and cut out a piece of stabilizer and put it down. I did not use a real heavy one. I used a soft and fuse, I think a Pellon is what I had at the time here, but any of them could work. And then you could make that as thick of a stabilizer as you wished. I really, was experimenting, and so I used what I had. And so it's a craft infuse is what I used. It's not very thick, but it's going to do the job. And then my vinyl I've got I got the packaging here. I didn't have the packaging for the other ones, but it's just a heat and bond iron on vinyl. But this one is pretty thin. And you might want to try using a little bit thicker one. I don't know. The thin one has been working well for me. And so the first thing that you do when you're getting ready to make this is you're going to fold it to the short ends so that your short ends are together. And then there's your zipper. And because I used vinyl, I wasn't overly excited about using pins on this. So we have the Wonder Clips, and I think they have them in the store. So if you've never used them or don't have any of the Wonder Clips, they're these small, that will hold things in place, and that holds the zipper in. But I wanted to do a scalloped edge and work with that a little bit so that you could see how that was going. So you're putting it on the short end, and I want to get this lined up, and it's a little bit tougher with the space that I have here. So I don't want it to get caught in the zipper, and so I want those scallops to line up at the edge of the zipper, and I want them to stay in that point. Now, I do not have vinyl at those intersections, so I certainly could use the Wonder Clips along here, and I could actually use a pin. But I happen to have, if you have it, so the Wonder Clips work really great as you're putting that on to work it along that side. So I'm looking at what I have here to work with, and I have an eighth of an inch tape, a double-sided tape, and I'm going to stick it down with that because it makes this really, really simple to work with, to get this to stay in place, and I don't have to worry about, um, how it's going to fit in the side of that. And I just noticed as I looked up, uh, Twyla says that she would add a flange on both ends, and maintain the scallops and all that. And yes, that certainly would work. I'm making this today probably as simple as I can. But a flange is always beautiful, and I certainly like them on my bags. So take Twyla's suggestion. So I have this 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I'm gonna put it close to the bottom here, uh, so that it doesn't get in the way of the flange. And there's a little line on my zipper that I'm following. And the hardest thing about sometimes this double-sided tape is that is getting the second piece of covering tape off the top, that brown layer you see. And so I certainly don't need to go all the way down to the end. All right, so I'm just going to make sure that that's nice and stuck. And then I pull that away. I use that grandmother's stain remover. This one was stained and turning brown, and I got most of that off. There was a few pieces that I didn't. A few areas where it didn't quite come off. All right, I think I got it, so that my scallops are on the edge. Now, normally when you would have, your placemat, you would already have the zipper in because you wouldn't be that fussy about it. But I wanted my scallops to be so that they did not cover the zipper. And so now we're simply going to go over. And honestly, I didn't even change my zipper, to my zipper foot, even though I'd probably recommend it. But for the sake of, time and issues that sometimes occur, I am going to go for it. And I'm running my and this first one is alrighty. All right. So that is now sewn on. And I need to flip this one around, and I'm going to sew this one to this side, matching up my ends and my scallops. But first I want to put the tape on the zipper again. And since you've seen me do that once, I will simply, and again, I'm following that line on my zipper at the end so that I know that I'm going to catch that, but it's not going to go over the scallops and leave a sticky, gap or opening. So I'm just following that line. And again, this is really not necessary at all when you are creating, this same bag with a, placemat or unscalloped edges. The scalloped edges come into play, and messing with that. And I just wanted to do that on camera so that you could, see how that worked. So I'm lining up that edge and getting my scallops right along the edge of that zipper as I move down. And I notice right away that they're really not lining up perfectly, so they're just going to go down. And so it'll have a little different look to it. The bag that I made first did match up a little bit better than this one. But my mother, this was one of my moms, and she was, a very excellent applicator. And so I wanted to make this one for myself out of that. So now my zipper is basically on there, and I'm going to open that just to make it easier to sew. And I want to get rid of these extra threads because they're only going to get in my way. All right. I like the tape, to use the tape to put these down when I put zippers in a lot of the times. It just makes it so easy when you're actually sewing it, then removing pins, readjusting, that type of thing. So I do really enjoy that part. So my zipper is in. That section of the bag is pretty much complete at that point. And I do have some stains that did not come out of the bag, and I'm okay with that, simply because I wanted to use this. And now I want to locate the center of my bag so that I can line that up with, my zipper. And so you find the center of your bag. You can line that up. Here is where my clips will come in for my seam line. Now, if you want to put tabs on the end of this, or you're going to use, you know, your closure tabs. So I just took some old ribbon that I had, and you would tuck this in at this point between your zipper and the back side underneath, and I put a mark on it because I want that even right there. And I marked a line so that I would have it for so that both sides were going to be the same. Okay, and give me just a moment here. And I'm not thinking, because I need to turn this inside out, because my bag would then be inside out if I didn't. So and before I sewed it, I might have noticed that, but I thank the people who keep reminding me of what I'm doing on screen. So I want that zipper to the inside, because I certainly don't want to sew that zipper closed. All right. Whoops. And I apologize for that profusely. So let's go to this side. My zipper is going to come together. I'm putting my tab folded side down. I'm lining that up with, let me get that up there a little bit higher. I'm lining that line up with the edge. All right. All right. So I've got that side completed. We'll do the same thing with the other side. I'm so glad that you guys are so patient with me when I'm doing this stuff. I do also want to say to you that the vinyl makes it a little bit slippery as you're trying to, you know, to work with it. Not a biggie though. All right. So now I've got both of my sides clipped, and I'm ready to sew those sides together, and then I'll cut off those pieces. I'm simply going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, or actually a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch seam. And so I'm following my Sew Steady mat here. to keep that in line as I sew that. And they have the feet that have where you can, go over, vinyl and stuff, but this machine seems to do pretty well on its own, and so I don't feel that I need to do that, um, because my machine does sew over that pretty well. Now, when I do get to the zipper here, I am going to back stitch over that a couple of times, just to help it, give it some extra strength there. All right. And then we'll do that for the other side. And I hope that you are able to see just how quickly this could happen without necessarily having, the scallops, taping this, the sides, that kind of thing, because this really does go pretty quickly. To make a bag like this, and especially out of, and I think I might have just, that zipper might have moved just a little bit on me. Let's go back and see. I think I might be okay. So now I'm going to take a scissors that are not my cutting scissors, and I'm going to cut those off and get rid of my extra. All right, now to get a box bag, making this into that, I'm going to try to keep it in the screen as much as I can. I am going to go in, make sure that I like to press these seams open a little bit, so that it's just easier to and I have my marking on the bottom of the bag where I folded it before, so I can see that. I'm not sure you can on the video, and this is going to be tough because I've got this stuff in the way. Let me hold this up and get it in the place that I want it to be, and then I will show you. All right, I'm going to press the rest of this down now that I've got this, corner in. And to make my bag now, I need to cut, and this is now laying on that mark that I had made by creasing it in the middle of the bag. I think I want to do these 3 inches in length, and I don't see my ruler, so excuse me for a second. So I'm going to measure down 3 inches from the point, and I'm going to make a mark there. I don't know if you can see that mark very well on the screen, but 3 inches down from the point, I make that mark here, and then I am going to go from mark to mark, And so you're going to need some type of marking tool. I had my friction pen, but I must have moved it. So I will see, um, my pencil left a line along there. So then I'm going to sew straight across that line. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have to backstitch because I have, my scissors cutting with the lock stitch on it. So now I have basically, this corner, sewn across. And there's a couple of things that I can do with this when I turn my bag back around. And that is I can cut that off, but I am going to fold it in and leave it in the inside of the bag. And I will either by hand with thread, or I will secure it with double-sided tape, something of that nature. So let me get this lined up with the center of the bag. It's hard to do on screen. And then I will stop and check your comments and questions. I'm sure those of you who are more baggy savvy than I am might have some good things to say to us. All right. So now I've got that in line. And again, 3 inches is what I'm going to make this bag for me, for my purposes. And this can be any size that you wanted, honestly. But because of my motif and I wanted a little bit squarer bag, the blue one is more rectangular and flatter. And so I thought I would, and I did 2.5 inches with that one. So I thought if I gave this one a little bit more, so I went the 3. We'll see how that works out. Okay. Alrighty. The other thing that you can do, if you do not have one of those Teflon feet to go across vinyl, if you choose to put vinyl on this, you can also take tissue paper and cover it and sew over the tissue paper, and that works really great too. I've done that a number of times when I did not have. All right. Folding it back and making sure that it's folded where the crease is and it lines up with my seam on the edge. All right, so I have that. Let me get that out of your way so that you can see what I'm doing. So again, my 3-inch marks. And when I'm doing this on my own, I usually do all 4 corners at the same time, and then I can just sew around. So back stitch, and I think I lost my thread. Isn't it wonderful? And I did. And that's not a good thing when you're doing a bag, because on the vinyl, your stitch marks are left there. So that was interesting. I lost that thread way at the top. I don't think I've ever had that issue happen before. Now here comes the kicker. Can I thread this without that light on? All right, let's try this again. You ever have one of those days when things aren't going as smooth as you'd like? All right, last side. Again, let me do this off screen so I can manipulate the bag a little bit more. I am lining up my seam line with the center of the bottom of my bag, and it's just a little bit easier to do when I could hold it up and I could actually see where it is. And I know that I'm pretty much right on the money because when I fold this down, it folds right into that corner there, and I can see that, and that's kind of nice to know that I matched up those 3 lines. We're almost done here, people. I know that this was probably a little bit longer than it needed to be. Because seriously, when I'm just doing it on my own, within, 15-20 minutes, the bag is completed. And so it's really a fast and easy method to make a bag like this without doing lining, without having to quilt it first if you don't want to, if you're using a placemat. And they really do make cute travel bags. All right, let's turn this right side out. It's a little stiffer to do that when, because you have the vinyl in there. But it's all good. So I work along that side seam line that I, made first to get that settled in there, so you can see that and the Appliquick turning tool works super well. Anything sharp would puncture the the vinyl, so you really don't want to necessarily do that. But I do like the sharp point, and so the Appliquick turning tool is fabulous for turning anything. Um, and it's one of those tools that I don't know that I would appreciate being without, um, because it's just so helpful for so many things that I want to keep straight and work on. So getting all these corners pushed out. And I don't have to worry about the puncturing because it's got a rounded ball tip to it, and but yet it gets in there and gets those figured out really tightly and nicely. So again, I am going to turn on the inside, and I don't know if I can manipulate this. I'm just simply going to let this lay flat in there, and I might tack it down or use my double-sided tape to tape it down. I used the tape on the other one. And so now you have this bag, this, you know, and it's got your tabs on the end. With some old ribbon that I had, you could use any kind of cloth or whatever. And I have my applique piece from my, that my mother had done on the side, the center on the side of the bag. And anyway, there is my next box bag. And so again, quilted placemats go really, really fast, and or other placemats that's got the weight to it. I want to go back right now and just double check. If something spills, absolutely you can wipe it out. That's why for me the vinyl was kind of key, because I didn't want it to stain my linen, and also because the linen was fragile. All right. Yeah, those hankies, it's hard to cut them up, and putting them in picture frames is a very nice way to do that. Is there a reason she didn't trim the box corners to reduce bulk inside the bag? Yes. I simply didn't want to cut it. I didn't want those raw edges because I would need to probably go back and zigzag or do something like that. And they laid really flat. They didn't change the bulk that much in the inside. And it was simply a choice. But go ahead and trim them. Old quilt squares would be fabulous for this. Great idea. I didn't even think of, using my old quilt squares, and I certainly have plenty of those. And yes, I did box the sides. All right. Okay, I'm not, let's see. Carol, I haven't thought of that. And if you missed Carol's comment or didn't see it, she says, "Do you include a label with the history of the linen when you gift your bags?" No, I didn't do that, and I think I will go back and do it. The only people that I've given the bags to are relatives, and so I can easily go back and do that. But what a great idea is to put a label somewhere on the bag, and to give the history of that piece of linen and who had made it. Thank you, Carol. Um, and Carol also says Retro Clean has saved expensive clothing for me. I have not tried the Retro Clean, so that's good to know. I may try that as well, because the grandmother's stain remover didn't quite get a couple of those stains out. Um, Yeah, the whole Teflon foot, absolutely. You would probably need to do that. My machine took it through very easily. It might have been simply because my vinyl was thin, and so it went through my 770 Bernina without any problem. And if you don't have one of the Teflon feet, and you find that it's not sewing properly and you have that drag again, if you put tissue paper between your vinyl and your foot, it will take it through and that tissue paper just shreds away. So, but it does help and give the traction you need to get your foot through. So that's just one of those quick little um, Are you worried about the bubbles on the interfacing? No, because I don't really see them that much when it's completely done. And I normally don't have the bubbles. I think I'm not sure if they were really bubbles or not. Um, all right. Okay. Um, yeah, and thanks for the person who and the adhesive vinyl, I found it at Hobby Lobby. I know that Joann's also carries it. Um, Walmart used to carry that vinyl in larger sheets and stuff. You could probably pick it up at your local quilt store if they carry it, or if they're, a store that has made bags, uh, that type of thing. You could probably find it. But I do know that Joann's and Hobby Lobby both carry that iron-on vinyl. And it comes in different weights. And so look at the weight and how much, that you want. I had a very thin vinyl because I used it for a project last Christmas and I wanted it to be as thin as I could have it. And I just simply had that vinyl here and that's what I used. I like it, but I think a little bit thicker would give a little bit more body to the bag, and then you wouldn't have to use the craft infuse or whatever on the inside. And Barbara just putting Scotch magic tape on the bottom of the foot also works. Great tip. Thank you. All right. That is it for today with the bag. I hope it's something that you can use and try. And I guarantee you, if you try first using a quilted placemat, and the one that I have here is it's $3.98 at Walmart, and it's already quilted for you, and you simply sew up, put the zipper on the short end and then sew up your sides, you know putting them in the middle, box your corners, turn it right side out, and you're done. That's how quick it is. Working with the linens is a little bit more fiddly because you're putting vinyl on, you're putting, some stabilizer on the inside if you so choose. But these, none of that. And literally, I have done this in 20 minutes or less, and it works great, as well as other placemats that I picked up. And you can find these quilted placemats pretty easily. But this one, I happened to be at Walmart yesterday and I saw it laying on the shelf. So I grabbed it. It was $3.98 to show you guys. And so that works really well and you can do that. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful week and I will see you next week.